Welcome one, welcome all to another Soul Wombat Soulless selection, and this time we are covering Etrian Odyssey. This isn't a series that I have too much history with. I have a little bit, but not a lot. I got Etrian Odyssey Untold 2 at a GameStop, I want to say in high school. I think that the box art probably just caught my eye, so I picked it up. And I thought that I got to the second floor at the very least, or second stratum, but no. I just checked a few minutes ago and I was still on the first floor, which I think is just hysterical because I just assumed this whole time that I had played at least some of it. But no, it was just something that I had been thinking for years that I should go back to it, or that I should check out the rest of the series. After all, it has 2 in the name. That means that there's a 1, right? Little did I know that Untold was the remakes, so there was actually a total of 4 prior to that, because I don't know when 4 came out. So it could even have been 5 games before this. So yeah, I played a similar game. It's actually in the Etrian Odyssey series, or not in the series, but it's in the engine. Persona Q, I played that in the summer of 2021, and I fell in love with it. So, also, side note, for anyone keeping track at home, yes, this does mean that I have already failed the Soul Wombat Try Not To talk about Shin Megami Tensei Challenge. It was an impossible percent run. I don't know why anyone thought that I could make it anyways. So, yeah. After that, because I fell in love with the Etrian Odyssey gameplay, I decided to buy the whole series on eBay. It costed a pretty penny. It was around $400 to $450. But at that point, 3 alone, especially in the condition that I got them in, because I got them all in fantastic condition, 3 would have been worth over $300. So for the rest of them, and 3 for only about $100, $150 more, wasn't bad in the slightest. Still saved a bit more money than what I did on Dot Hack, which is another one that I plan to do a soulless selection on. Yeah, so I got in that bundle 1, as you see right here, 2, 3, Untold 1, and 4. So I got all those games for around $400, $450. So, again, as time goes on, some games do get remakes, and in this case, yes, it has already gotten a remake. It's also getting an HD remaster that's coming to pretty much every console in about 2 weeks. So yeah, I kind of wanted to play these before my transaction became more stupid than it already was. As well, I wanted to start with this one and not Untold 1, because I wanted to see, because some people said online that Untold was a bad remake. I had also seen other people say, well, if you have Untold, you don't need to play the first game. You've already played it. It's the same game. So I wanted to see who was right in that field. And without further ado, let's get into the review. The story. I will put a timestamp in the description so that you can skip between chapters, just in case you don't want spoilers for like the story or the characters, or even if you just want to skip to gameplay, graphics, that kind of thing. So I will have timestamps below. I'd like to have the chapters. I don't know how to do that. I'll figure it out, hopefully. I won't figure it out. Don't worry. This is not very story-based game, but it does have a lot more story than, like, Monster Warrior Monsters. So I will be going a lot more in-depth. Without any better place to start than the beginning of the game has Team 348, Stan, the Lansknecht, Aubrey, the Protector, Nats, the Troubadour, Bone Boy, the Medic, and Grem, the Alchemist, all coming to Etria. Maybe we heard about the dungeon, the labyrinth, and all the mysteries, and we decided we wanted to check it out. Doesn't matter. We got there, and everyone there treated us like a bunch of punks, like we just a whole bunch of nobodies. But for understandable reason. See, the dungeon isn't incredibly dangerous. It's not a safe place, so it's not somewhere that people want to be when they're weak-willed. There are a lot of people that will just give up. They'll make it through maybe the first floor and they'll retreat. They're done. They leave. So our first task is just to map out only part of the first floor. That's the big challenge to continue the game, is can you even do simple, basic tasks, like playing the goddamn game? It's a tutorial, but the story implications are kind of interesting, because it really does imply that there are people that would just take shortcuts. They wouldn't properly map things. They'd just either try to blitz through and they'd overextend themselves. Any number of things. So, upon completing that, we're allowed to go down to the second floor, which is where we first encounter FOEs. Other than that, nothing really major happens on the second floor. Third floor, we meet Ren and Talachtka. I don't know how that's how her name is pronounced. I call her Talachtka because, I mean, that's what it looks like. I have it written down here. I apologize. I have notes here. Old age is getting to me, so I will have to reference my notes at least on a few occasions to go through the story. More so for the characters, because that's the longest segment. Let's see, where am I? Talachtka is spelled Tlachtga. They underestimated us. They said that there's dangerous wolf infestation, so we're not allowed to continue going through. And we got turned around and ended up taking the quest to exterminate the wolves. We have to take out their leader on the 5th floor, and the big infestation that's on the 4th floor. When we told Ren and Talachtka about this, they were a bit hesitant, but they did let us pass. In fact, afterwards, they were a lot kinder. They weren't as abrasive. Ren offered us some advice, and Talachtka stayed on a fixed point on the map to offer us healing as we went through. And we did. We took out that wolf. It didn't stand a chance. It really wasn't a challenge. It's the first boss, so it's not going to be too challenging, of course, but we absolutely slaughtered that whole wolf family. They're probably extinct now. Kind of a lightning round. Once we got to the second stratum, there wasn't really too much story that happens. There's a little bit, but mainly we steal a dragon egg, and then we get told, wow, that sure is a surprise that you got the dragon egg. That's impressive. As a reward, you get to meet Chief Virgil. So yeah, we met Chief Virgil. That was our reward for almost dying. We met just some random dude, and we get told that, there is a secret way to continue down the dungeon. It's been lost by time. So we go down and we find some secret passages, and we continue on to the 3rd stratum, which is no longer a forest or a jungle. It's a blue jungle. So, big difference. As we continue down, we meet Ren and Talachtka. I believe that's when they give us their items so we can actually class into Ronin and Hexers, which is cool. But most importantly, that's when we meet the forest girl, who tells us that we have to leave. We're not allowed to continue, because doing so is trespassing, and it violates an ancient pact signed by the people of the overground. I don't really know how to describe it. And the people of the underground, the forest folk. So, if we continue, we will be treated as if we are declaring war, and they will destroy us. So we continue anyways, because what are they gonna do? Freaking destroy us? And she gets mad, and she sticks a really big fish on us, and we kick its ass, and she kind of got surprised about that. She thought that the fish would kill us, and we killed it. So she goes, wow, fuck, my fish. And then she runs away, and we progress to the 4th stratum. This is where the story really starts kicking into gear. We report that we made it to the 4th stratum, and we were once again threatened that if we continue, we will be wiped out. And they will possibly even continue their march and wipe out the surface as well. Chief Virgin does tell us that it is now our job to make Andrew Jackson proud, and we have to wipe out the forest folk. His exact wording is, if it's gonna be us or them, it's gonna be us. Of course, there's some trickery afoot, as we, the player characters, the characters don't know, the player knows, that it's all a ruse. He thinks that they're gonna wipe us out. That's what he wants. He wants us to overextend ourselves and get killed by the plant people. Failing that, he has told Ren and Telechka to kill us if we make it through the forest folk. We make it through the forest folk. We get through to the 3rd floor of that stratum, and we meet with Ren and Telechka, who warn us that we should turn back. There's simply too many of the forest folk. They're simply too strong for us. We just need to give up. We need to accept that we're not strong enough to continue and go back. Kind of suspicious that they're there with no issues, and, you know, they're supposed to be stronger than us, so why couldn't they just help us? But, you know, too many questions, too little answers at the moment. But as we leave that conversation, they mutter, saying that they don't want us to continue because they don't want to have to kill us to protect them. Who's them? I guessed that it was the forest folk at the time, but I don't know. Who? Could it be the surface? Because if we continue this declaration of war, the plant people will go to the surface and try to wipe us all out? Only time will tell. When we make it to the final floor of the Sandy Barrens, we are face to face with the full might of the Forest Folk Army. There are countless FOEs. I know there's Diabolics and Ogres and Warriors. There's another humanoid one that's like Diabolics, but less of a pain in the ass to fight, and then a really big bird that the forest girl sicks on us. I know this technically goes into gameplay, but as part of the story, it also affects it. If you try to kill the bird first, it will come back, unless you take out all of the FOEs that are on the floor. You have to take out every FOE, and then you can fight the bird. Otherwise, it just reincarnates, because that's just the forest folks' ability. They can just bring it back. Of course, I did neglect to mention this, that when you get to the beginning of the floor, actually the beginning of the stratum, you are face to face with the plant girl again. And you at this point have the mission to wipe them out. It does offer some pretty good role-playing, if you ask me, because it has a few options. You can just silently draw your weapon, prepare to fight her then and there, or you can try to be diplomatic about it. It's going to fall on deaf ears, but it does help to add character to your party. What are their intentions? Do they want to just, do you want to get through the dungeon at all costs? Devil may care who gets in, devil may cry who gets in your way, especially because I'm calling him Virgil. Or are you going to try to be diplomatic about it? Are you just curious about the mysteries? Do you want to make it down? Or are you willing to commit genocide? And that's actually something that is really contentious about people. I saw in a few GameFAQs forums that people really weren't happy how it was handled, because the forest folk are innocent. They are not the aggressors. They're not doing anything wrong. But if that's changed, that takes away hugely from the story. And I'll continue to get into that in just a second. But you do wipe out, inevitably, the forest folk army, and the forest girl just concedes. She concedes defeat and says, alright, Well, what am I gonna do to stop you? Alright, just go. Be free, continue, do what you want. You killed everyone. You killed the men, you killed the women, you killed the children. Everyone's dead. And then she just, as the forest spirit that she is, just fades back into the trees. Where it starts to get a little trippy is when you go down to the 5th floor. When you go to the 5th floor, it does tell you you have to go back to report the mission. And Chief Virgin's gone. Nobody can find him. You're told by the Radha Hall guy that he went down to the dungeon and he wants you to try to find him. Bring him back, make sure he's safe, because he means a lot to this town. Everyone loves him. So we take the mission and we start the plunge into the 5th floor. Lost Shinjuku. It's pretty telling where the story's gone from here. You start in the forest. You go to a jungle. You go to a blue jungle. You go to a desert, and then you go into the remnants of a long-forgotten civilization. It gets more and more uninhabitable as you go down. And the implications are that the world we currently live in is gone. It's dead. Everyone, they fucked up. And now we find out that we've actually been fighting our way down a very big skyscraper as we now try to make our way to the bottom floor. In the first floor of the 5th stratum, as you have to cross a very, very unsafe log, I must say, and get to another building because a log, or really branch, has grown and pierced these two buildings, connecting them. Also, I'd like to say that OSHA would not be happy with the working conditions, and the Radha Hall has better get ready for a lawsuit or two, because what if we fell? But halfway across that branch, we come face to face with Ren and Tlashka, who tell us, great, you've made it to the 5th floor. You've made it further than anyone else before. Have we? They're here. That means that someone else has made it down here before. And they say to just turn back. We don't stand a chance against them, and they have been ordered not to let us pass. So, unfortunately for them, it falls on deaf ears. And we kicked their ass! It was such a fun fight. Like, I'm sure it's supposed to be sad or something, but it was so fun. I have been looking forward to that since the moment that I met Ren, of just, not even that I disliked her, I want to kick her ass. I want to prove that I am the better swords person. And I did. I got the chance to kick her ass. And I have not had anything that made me feel more accomplished than doing that. After their defeat, they hand us a card key and say that Chief Virgil is waiting for us on the bottom floor, and to make our way down to him and not to keep him waiting. So we do. We continue just absolutely destroying the monsters. At this point, I started using the big gamer strat against regular encounters just because they were doing so much damage, and I could wipe them out in like the second turn, even first turn, especially towards the latter half. Once we got down to the bottom floor, Chief Virgil is waiting for us in just a big open room. I'm kind of imagining that it's like the entrance of a building. And there are notes throughout this floor that give you little bits of story. It talks about a scientist and someone named Virgil, as I've been calling him, who's done something and this and that. But every time we pick up these notes, they disintegrate the moment we touch them. They're so old and weathered that they're just returning to dust. But now that we're in front of the man himself, he gives us part of the story. He tells us that, congrats, we've made it to the ruins of a lost civilization. And if we want to know the truth, we'll have to get to the door behind him. He's standing in front of a door. I apologize, forgot to mention that part. And we did. We go through that door, even though he said that nothing good waits for us on the other side. When we get to the other side, the lights are out. We cannot see anything. All we can do is hear him as he explains that long time ago there was a former civilization and it was dying out. Somehow they were killing the planet with pollution and radiation and all that fun jolliness. But when everyone else gave up, there was a group of scientists that kept pushing, and they managed to create a miracle. They called it Yggdrasil, after the big tree of legend, which, let me just say, I am so tired of, like, ooh, it's a tree in a game, Yggdrasil. Like, can't it just... Can we give it another name, like Peter, or something stupid like that? Like, I get it. I'm not... It's a very human thing to do, to be like, okay, we're gonna name this thing after this legendary thing from another thing, like, figured the Apollo missions and stuff like that. But I'm just so tired of the name Yggdrasil. I mean, it's in so many games at this point. I'm tired of it as a name. I think it's one of the most lazy names at this point, because yes, it's a reference to the Tree of Life, the one that pierces through, like, the 90 realms or whatever. I don't like the name anymore. I thought that it was neat for a while, but I've grown tired of it. It's like if every single character was like, oh yeah, we're gonna name this character Michael after Archangel Michael. Like, yeah, I think that that's a cool thing to, like, oh, this character's name is Michael, like the Archangel Michael. It's a reference to him. But if everything was doing it, it'd be like, oh, look, this guy's named Michael because of the Archangel Michael. Get an original goddamn idea for once. Name him David. Yeah, like David and Goliath. But after he explains everything to us, the chief tells us that it's over. We've learned the truth, and now we're too dangerous. The lights go on, and we find out that he himself is a big tree named the Entient. Seems that Yggdrasil, I don't know why I called it Yggdra, I was thinking Yggdra Union. Yggdrasil was just a core idea, and that someone needed to make sure that it would continue to work. So he took it into himself and became the Tree of Life, which is why we saw all those papers from so long ago that had his name on them. He was one of the scientists. This is never confirmed or really denied, at least in the first game, but I'm kind of wondering if the forest folk were either born from him, or maybe they were the scientists that worked alongside him. Maybe that's all it was. Against this immortal tree monster, we have to fight, and the fight we do. It's kind of a hard fight. It was definitely the hardest in the game, which makes sense. But with just the gamer strat of defender, immunize, all/smite, regular attack, making sure to heal, and then zip zap carnival, and 2 nectars along the way, we made it through, and Virgil dies. And we've learned the truth of the labyrinth. We go back up, we report the death of Vizel to Radha Hall, and we also see a few other scenes just talking about us, really. Ren and Tlachka are interested to see where we go next. Because, hey, we bested them. We've proven that we are the strongest warriors. It's definitely not like a super in-depth story, but I feel like it works. It did help me come back for more. Even if the main draw to me was the gameplay, it still helped because there was a mystery to uncover along the way. In the last 2 to 3 stratums, when it really started to kick in, that was great because that's when my interest really started to wane, and it started to feel like I was more grinding out the game to try to continue, to try to beat it. But right as they started introducing more story, I gained more interest. Funny enough, kind of like Monster Warrior Monsters, most of this wasn't gameplay, or it wasn't story, it was gameplay. So I want to say it was about 60 to 70 hours. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you the exact amount of time that you spent on it. I want to say only about 2 to 3 hours was entirely story based and not gameplay based. So, even if I do think that the story had a weak conclusion, because I feel like it was kind of weird, I still do think that it was a fantastic story, and it is absolutely worth experiencing for yourself. This game in general is worth experiencing for yourself. Oops, sorry, I spoiled the end of the review. Uh, I think that this deserves a 4. I really do. So one major thing to the story that I liked is the character of Izzle. I'll get a little bit more into that, but it's a whole bunch of everything that we do that's wrong, that a lot of people had issues with, is all his fault. And that's part of what I like about it, is that it's all just a series of fuck-ups from this one idiot. I do find it kind of funny, though, that the entire reason that he set up this whole adventuring town to go down to the labyrinth was just for money, it seems. I don't know why Vizzle wanted people to explore. If it was going to be such a detriment to go down beneath the dungeon and find out the truth, that the world already ended and that we're in technically an artificial world while the real one gets cured by this tree of life that's managing to get rid of the radiation and pollution, why did he have us going down there? It was just to line his pockets because he's an asshole. Easily, I can give this a 4. It definitely exceeded my expectations, which maybe that's on me. Maybe other people, since I've said that this is a 4 out of 4 story, they're gonna go in and it's gonna not meet their expectations. But for me personally, was not expecting this to just be such a good story to me. It tied the game into itself. So easily I can give that a 4. It exceeded my expectations. Surprisingly, the story actually does have some really strong characters. It has some weak ones too, but it does actually have some pretty good characters. This is the longest part of the review, so I'm gonna be referencing the notes here even more than I did in the story. So yeah, expect some choppy bits. First things first, the innkeeper. His design does all the heavy lifting with his character, because he lets you know that he's the most boring fuckhead in the entire game. He has, like, one line, I think, which is just to say, "Oh, you look tired, you must be exploring the labyrinth." Yeah, I know, I've been here for months. You should know me on a first-name basis, you dumbass. Equally boring is the Exploration Guild guy. He's just annoying, because he seems like he'd have such an amount of character that from just like the first lines that you meet him, he says stuff, he seems gruff, he seems like he has a personality, and then he has like 4 more lines in the entire game, and 3 of those are just if you take certain quests, he'll say them. Yeah, he's such a boring character. He's actually really disappointing. I think that there's only like one other major character to bring up that only has 1 line outside of like story cutscenes, and that's the Radhahal guy. Apparently his name's Quinn. Didn't know that. I had thought of him just as the Radhahal guy. And he's at least involved in the story a little bit. He wants you to take more of a diplomatic approach with the forest folk. He kind of acts as like the voice of reason for all the missions during the game, whereas Chief Virgil, as what we think of him, he's just a crazy idiot that's telling us, okay, just go wipe out the crippled people, go fucking kick their asses. Like, Quinn, on the other hand, will say like, oh, maybe there's a way we can be peaceful with them, or hey, sorry to put you on such a dangerous mission, but we need you to go steal an egg from a dragon, and your reward is getting the opportunity to meet a jackass. those three, there's actually a fourth, but he's so mediocre to not have to bring up. Like, I'm kind of bringing up the extremes here. And those three are pretty boring characters. Quinn is the better of those three, but he's involved in the main story, and I'd say he's worse than some of the just other NPCs. Because Shilika, she's the town merchant, and I get the feeling that she's gonna rustle a few feathers when the remake comes out, just because she has a very thick accent that's given to you in the actual dialogue, the stuff that she says, as well as her design might ruffle a few feathers, because it does, to some extent, look a little... I don't know how to word it. I don't want to say, like, oh yeah, she looks like a caveman. She doesn't. But it looks like... You could make the assumption that it's a bit of a stereotype of, like, tribal garb, and especially with the accent letting you know that she's not from here, you can kind of make assumptions as you will, but she actually does have a bit of a personality to her that's pretty interesting. At the start, just like everyone, she just assumes that you're just a bunch of couple idiots just coming in, you want money, you want fame, that kind of thing, and you'll give up soon. But as the game goes on, she talks about how she and the rest of her team of the company she owns look forward to when you get back, because you guys are the best customers and you provide the most for them. That you're absolutely indispensable to her organization, that she genuinely cares about you guys. It's not an in-depth character growth, but it's still something, and it makes her a bit more enjoyable. And I do have to say that her having an accent makes her interesting and makes her more memorable to me. Valerie, on the other hand, I'd say she's the most memorable of the town NPCs because she has the most dialogue. I want to say she's at least got like 100 to 200 times more than what the Explorers Guild guy has. So she's got so many lines because you can talk to her depending on where you're in the game, and she'll have different things to say. As well, she'll also talk to you when you take a quest and when you finish a quest. And as the game goes on, she makes it clear that she really does care about everyone that comes in. Maybe she cares about 348 a bit more because they're doing so much for her. They're taking on all these quests that other people aren't. There are a few quests, they're the Test of Strength quests, that she tries to convince you not to take because they're so dangerous. She makes it clear she doesn't want to see people just get hurt. At least not unnecessarily. It's inevitable that people are going to get hurt and die in the labyrinth. But if there's any way that she can stop someone from doing something stupid, like, going out on their own to fight an FOE, she's going to try to do it. But she does know that she's not going to really be able to convince you. And the only thing that's going to convince you is life or death at the end. Whether you beat the stinking monster or whether the stinking monster beats you. That's all that it's going to be. But I do have to say that she's pretty memorable as a result. I liked that character. I don't know about the future quest givers. I think that it'll be interesting to see and compare them as the series goes on. But of the town NPCs, Valerie's easily my favorite. Now we're on to the actual story-based characters. Also, I'm terrified of that timer up there. I am 6.5 minutes into this. This takes up way more pages than the story, and somehow the story took me 20 minutes to describe. I don't know if I'm speedrunning this, or if where I'm able to remember a whole lot more about the characters and what I wanted to say, that I'm able to just condense it down and not repeat as much, or maybe I'm skipping a whole bunch of stuff. I'm getting nervous. Tlachka is the first one for the story. She's pretty boring. She's kind of just an accessory to Ren. There's a bunch of scenes with her. I think only a few with just her, but the most memorable ones to me are the one where she gives you water and the one where she gives you the Hexer Bell so that you can take on the mantle of being a Hexer yourself. The Ren and Talachka are not exactly the most vocal characters anyways, but Talachka easily has the least to say. My biggest hope for Untold is that they don't change that too much, though, because them not having a lot to say kind of adds in a way, because they're veteran warriors. They have completed this journey. Spoilers, I don't know if they know the truth. I think that they may have had the same experience as us, going down to meet Chief Virgin and having him give them the ultimatum of, okay, you've made it down here, you've got the bragging rights, but if you continue, I'm gonna kill you. So I don't know if they had that and they decided to go back and not learn the truth. I think that they would be best as static characters, that they've seen the truth, they aren't going to develop anymore, they've learned all they can. I think that that's far more interesting than if they became these dynamic characters that change so much throughout the game, aside from personal relationships and how they think of the main characters. That, I think, should be the thing that changes the most. Maybe at the very end they could be like, well, now that we know there's more, now that we know the truth, we can go down. We can complete our journey we never completed. I think that would be interesting, but not having them be like these big dynamic characters that have just so much to learn and all that. I think that would be cheesy. I'm really starting to like more and more of the static characters like Goku, who don't need to learn anything. They've found what they want, basically. Ren is the more vocal of the two warrior women, and at the start she's actually kind of aggressive with you, saying like, you're weak, go back, you suck, you smell like doo-doo, idiot. But that facade does quickly break down after you accept the mission to take on the wolves. Then she is really willing to give you advice to make sure that you don't die. I think that that's part of why she's so dismissive, is that she doesn't want people to get hurt, because she knows that she is strong and she takes it upon herself to protect those that aren't as strong as her. As I explained in the story, she does say that she's interested to see where Team 348 goes next, to see what they do. So I like to think that they have a merger, they go together, and they become friends. And also that Stan and Ren fight all the time, that they spar to really just practice their swordsmanship. I said it also in the story that I liked the fight. I think it's supposed to be sad that you have to fight Ren and Talachka to what they think is the death. They think that you're trying to kill them because they know they're trying to kill you. We didn't have to. We could really hold back on them, trust me. They weren't that impressive. So I thought that it was cool. And that's part of why I like Ren as a character more than Talachka, because I felt like there was more of a rivalry, more of a desire to actually surpass her and become better. Someone that has the honor of being acknowledged by this warrior woman. So I liked Ren. It's a shame that her pet Stimpy was a little bit not as impressive. Maybe if I played as an alchemist, I'd want to surpass Talachka more. Maybe that's all it is. But overall, I did like those two characters. And I don't know why I said overall. I know that someone in the audience just got excited, like, ooh, we're done with this segment. No, you're not. We've got another half a page. Forest Girl. She's named in Untold. She's not named in this, because she's not as major of a character. I don't like what they did in Untold. Oops, I do have a few little spoilers from Untold, just from that GameFAQs board. She's alright. I mean, she plays a role as an antagonistic character, but part of it that I like is that she's not a villainous character. She's just trying to protect her people and their place of living. She just doesn't want adventurers just charging through thinking that they own the place, which is a very understandable thing. There's even a saying like, good fences make good neighbors. That's all it is. But we manifest destiny. We charged right through and we wiped them out. She tests the player actually quite a lot in using her summoned creatures to fight us, and she also tests the characters with the role-playing aspects, with us being able to try being diplomatic and failing pretty spectacularly, or just getting it over and done with. We know that we're going to fight her anyways, so we may as well just draw the weapons now. So I really think that it adds to the story that the forest folk weren't in the wrong, that the forest folk were just trying to go about their lives and defend themselves. I like that, because it adds to the most interesting of the characters, to my favorite of the characters, who's coming up next. And that's also part of why she's my second favorite of the characters, is because there's an intrigue, there's a mystery to her, and yes, we're fighting her, but she's not evil, and that's something that's easy to see, is that she's not the bad guy, but that doesn't change that she's in our way. Lastly, is Chief Vizzle, is his name actually. I'm gonna keep calling him Virgil or Virgin, because those are just better names to me. He is easily the best character in the game for so many reasons. He puts on this beautiful facade of being this kind and caring guy that makes the town people love him. He's using his thousands of years of experience living to manipulate people and just really make them think he's this great guy. I don't know how they didn't realize that he's undying. Maybe he changes his appearance every once in a while. Who knows? But he's a great, great character. I loved him because he is such a pompous ass. Because once you start to become a threat, he stops being nice. His personality changes entirely. He becomes cruel. He literally tells you to go commit genocide. And you do. But he didn't want you to commit the genocide. He wanted you to die. He wanted the forest folk to absolutely just beat your ass. It didn't work. So he sent Ren and Talachka after you, because they're superior. Well, that didn't work. So next, he has to fight you. You're not gonna beat him. There's no way. He's a god. How can you kill a god? It is such a grand and intoxicating innocence. Until you've proven that, yeah, you can kill him, because he may not die of old age, but he can certainly die from being cut into pieces. And I think that it is such just great character for him that his downfall was hubris, and not that he was just there. He's not written as the good guy, even though he was technically in the good guy role. He's trying to save the world. But he lost sight of who he was. It just became an obsession with him. He's too old. And that's what it is. He's old, he's arrogant because he can't die, he thought, until he dies. And that's when he realizes that, oops, he lost sight of what he was trying to do. So, get dunked on, bozo. So, yeah, there are a lot of good characters. I spent a lot more time going into the better characters like Vizzle, Ren, Talachka, Valerie. I did go into more of them. But there's also characters like Dr. Hoffman, the Innkeeper, Explorer Dude, Talachka, Quinn, that aren't very good. So I'm gonna say that it meets my expectations. It's not a 4, it's a 3. Even if I love the characters, I can say that there's still a lot of room to grow for the characters that aren't very interesting. I can understand having some of them just not say much, but when you've only got like 10 whole characters, there's not really a reason to have any of them be so boring. At least give them dialogue that changes with where you're at. I mean, Dr. Hoffman, his dialogue changes depending on where you're at, but it just makes him the middle. It makes him not as good as Quinn, because Quinn at least has dialogue in the main story, and it makes him not as bad as Explorer Dude, or what's his face? Actually, Innkeeper doesn't have a name, so it just makes him there. makes him not really that interesting. So it's definitely a 3 because it met my expectations, because I didn't think that this game would be crazy story focused or crazy character focused, and it ended up having some really good characters and a great story. So overall, 3 out of 10, or not 3 out of 10, 3 out of 3, 3 out of 4, it met my expectations. So yeah. Next will be the gameplay, which, just like last time, is going to be split into a few different segments. So, yeah, I was hoping this would be a shorter video. Seeing how long the Dragon Warrior Monsters review went, I was hoping that it would be like, I don't know, 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes. Yeah, we're definitely over 40 at this point, so yay, we're just gonna split these up, the gameplay segments. This is the town, and there's a few big things to talk about with gameplay. So the town is the quickest to go over. I'm just gonna give you a little tour in the little tour around the town. So first is the inn. It lets you save, it lets you heal, as well as when you heal you can either sleep till morning or sleep till night, which lets you change the time of day depending on if you have to go into the dungeon at certain times of day for side quests. So there's not too much to the inn. Next is the apothecary, Seft or Keft Apothecary, run by Dr. Hoffman, that lets you revive fallen party members, recover them from being petrified, and lets you buy healing items. So that's where you can buy like your medicines and your revival items, that kind of stuff. Next is Shilika's Goods, which is where you can buy weapons and armor, as well as consumables like the elemental oils and the warp wire, that kind of thing. Warp wire is literally just the warp wing from Monster Warrior Monsters, so there's not too much to go over with that. It's also where you can sell monster parts and other things that you can gather, gathering points, and that's how you'll make your money, and that also makes the selection of available goods increase, because if you can sell the different parts, you'll unlock different weapons, armors, consumables, even medicines for the Keft Apothecary. That's all made in Shilika's Goods. The Golden Deer Pub is your hub for side quests. It lets you take on side quests. That is nothing really big to go off of that. You can take the side quests, you can give the side quests, not give side quests, you can report them. And it gives you items and money if you complete them. You can accept up to 5 at one time, and they're definitely worth doing because there are some pretty interesting stories. They're small stories, but they can be pretty interesting. The quests can range from really fun and really quick to spend 5 days on one fucking floor in a dungeon and make you want to fucking never play that goddamn game again. That one was awful. I don't even remember what the reward was, but I remember it wasn't very good, wasn't worth it. I remember one dude online said that he did it before unlocking the healing fountain. I don't know how he did that. That was like... Imagine... Oh my god, imagine getting like really unlucky at the last day or something like that. Because it takes a while. Oh god, I used Stalker to reduce the amount of random encounters, and it took me, I want to say 5 hours, something ridiculous like that. It was awful. That quest was boring. I don't recommend doing that one unless you really want to make yourself miserable. The Explorers Guild lets you create party members. You can have 5 in a party at one time. You can also rest characters to set them down 10 levels, and it sets all their skill points. It gives you all them back. So if you're at level 40 and you rest, you'll be down to 30, and you'll have 30 skill points that you can use. Fantastic. I accidentally used it once, and it sounded like such a pain in the ass that I just went back to a previous save, which was hours prior, because I knew that it would be saving significantly more time than if I tried to grind Aubrey back up when I was trying to take that quest, because I just wanted to take her off the party so I could take one of those test of strength side quests. But also, you can retire characters, which supposedly you get bonus skill points if you're at high enough levels, and also it lets you grow to higher levels, something like that. I didn't interact with those because they sounded like a pain in the ass to just do more grinding, and this game was already grindy enough. It had quite a bit of it. But there's not really a better place to talk about the different classes that you can be. So starting with the first one is the Landsknecht, which, trust me, I have spelt it so many different ways on this script that I don't know how to write it, but I can sure as hell say it. They're very, very good. They're your very basic sword and board kind of guy. They get a skill called All Slash, does a whole shitload of damage, as well as some chaser skills, which are Freezer, Blazer, and Shocker. They can also use axes if you're an idiot. The sword is just so much better because, again, All Slash is one of the strongest moves in the game. It's really good, especially at the high rank skills. Next is Protectors. They're absolutely mandatory. They're not just very good like the Landsknecht. You need a Protector, especially in this game, because they get a skill called Defender, which at max rank can reduce all incoming physical damage by 60%. And if you don't have that, good luck, because you're not making it very far. You'll make it through the first maybe 2 stratums, but third is where you're gonna get your ass kicked. Trust me, it's you kind of need one. The game is not balanced around not having one. They also get a move called Smite, which is that is a good move. I had that on Aubrey, and that did even more damage than All Slash. It's a really good move, so easily fantastic. I recommend a Protector. Survivalists, I didn't really use them very much, but I did read up online, and they seem to be more about like stage hazards and that kind of stuff. There was really only one floor where that was an issue, so I don't really recommend using one. It's not Dragon Warrior Monsters where it's oops all damage tiles. There's like the second stratum is the only one with damage tiles, so yeah, just skip the Survivalist. Maybe you can make it work. I didn't take a look into them, and I don't plan to take a look into them. When I play the game again for Untold, if I do classic mode, I'm probably going to run the same team that I did because it worked. It was good. It was fun. Loved it. They had great synergy. Dark Hunters, I didn't use, but from their description, they mainly seem to be about binds, which are helpful because almost every attack that any enemy, even bosses, have is attached to a limb. So if you bind their head, they can't use that skill anymore. They're probably even better against the final boss, because even though he has the ability to erase all binds and that's not attached to any limb, if you get him in a bind, you might be able to get him in a loop where he just keeps trying to unbind himself. So maybe that's a ultimate gamer strategy. So maybe the Dark Hunter could actually be good. I don't know. I didn't use one. Medics are also mandatory. Not just because they can revive you, and not just because they heal you in battle. They get a skill called Immunize. And that is like Defender, but for magic attacks. It, at max rank, can reduce all incoming magic damage by 60%. So yeah, 10 out of 10. Wonderful medic. Loved Bone Boy. Alchemists are just mages. I don't know why they're called alchemists and not just mages. It's a bit of flavor text, I guess. Makes it seem a little bit more interesting, I guess. Sorry. It's not even Sunday and I'm dying. I used one. It was amazing. I specialized in electric, because there's 3 major trees. There's fire, ice, electric, and those can actually connect with the chaser skills that the Landsknecht has, and those can do really good damage, especially if you're taking advantage of the enemy weakness. So I recommend using an alchemist. Trust me, they also get the poison skill, which in most games is a joke, but when you fully spec into it, it does a shitload of damage. It is just a big shame that most bosses resisted it, so it didn't hold out as much in late game. But it was still good in the early game. Troubadours. How do you not play this game with a troubadour? They get the relaxing skill, that's like their main claim to fame, and the main reason that I had one on my party, which at max rank will increase, or it recovers your SP by 10% at the end of every turn, which is just so good. Early game, they also have Shelter and Bravery, which are kind of like, they're good, but they get replaced by having Immunize and Defender up. Like, there's no reason to use any of the other things. They also get Divinity, which, oh my gravy, this eyelash is attacking. It is not happy. They also get Divinity, which increases the amount of EXP you get after every fight, which is just a really, really helpful ability. So absolutely mandatory. You need one because, trust me, your fights can get expensive, but relaxing will help you keep them in the fights longer. So it is just 10 out of 10. Get a Troubadour, get a Medic, get a Defender, or not Defender, get a Protector, and anything else is pretty much optional, but I mean, really, your team's set up for you. You don't even care about most of them. What I just said was a very bog standard team. There's a reason it works, there's a reason it's fun, and that's because that's what the game is balanced around, basically. The Ronin confuses me because it seems to just be a higher damage, lower defense version of the Lance Connect. I didn't use one, so I can't really say for certain, but I don't know, just use a Lance Connect because they're beautiful. The Hexer is another one I didn't use, but they seem to be kind of a mix of the Dark Hunter and the status effect side of the Alchemist. So maybe they're good, maybe they're not, but I don't know. I didn't use one. You just unlock it so late into the game that I wasn't going to try to create one from scratch. Okay, back on track. Back onto the tour. Radha Hall, that's where you can accept missions and where you can update the Monstrous Codex and the Item Compendium, which, if you do both of those before you accept the reward for completing the final mission, which is finding Chief Virgin, you'll get the Town Crown instead of the Town Medal, which if you carry over to the next game increases your stats, that kind of thing. It's significantly better than the medal, but it's a grind, and I didn't feel like doing that. So when I play the second game, I'm going to have the Town Medal, not the Town Crown. Also, I didn't know that was a thing until after I accepted the Town Medal, because you can't get both, just one or the other. Alright, and almost done with the town reading, and actually almost done with the review, because we're on the second to last page. The last option is to leave the town, obviously. In that menu, you can either dive directly into the dungeon, or you can use the geomagnetic field, which brings you to the purple pillars at the start of every stratum after the first one. It's pretty simple. They're great. Also, the purple pillar lets you save. I could probably have explained that in exploration, but it's kind of part of this. So yeah, that wraps up our tour of Etria, and there's not too much to talk about with that, aside from the fact that it's weird how split up everything is. I feel like Keft Apothecary, just wipe it out, get rid of it. You should have been able to revive people at the inn, and you should be able to buy medicine at the general goods store. Other than that, that concludes our tour of Etria. Alright, this won't be as long as our tour of Etria, but this is exploration. It's a first-person dungeon crawler, and it's old, so it's kind of a clunky one. You can only move forwards, you can't stray for anything. There's like one-way doors, there's hidden shortcuts, there's auto-scrolling things, there's warp mazes, that kind of stuff. It's pretty standard, but it is kind of clunky just due to its age. Yeah, there's the heal spots, which are just fountains. There's the save points that are also teleporters. That's the easy stuff. There's also FOEs, which are field on enemies in Japan, And then there's something in Latin and English, which is different between the US and the European release, which everyone knows that part about them. FOEs are just big monsters. They patrol the floor. They kind of act like mini bosses, even though they're not really actually genuinely mini bosses. They're stronger than the monsters on the floor that you find in random encounters, but they give really good experience, and they tend to give you items that are worth a decent amount of money when you sell them. The last important thing is the map. The map is another gimmick, because you make the map yourself. You draw the walls, you add icons to let you know where everything is. What you'd think for strafe, it's the L and R buttons, but that lets you actually change floors on the map to see like, oh, what's on this floor, what's on this one. So the map is a fun tool. I think it adds a lot, because there's a lot of times that I would get pissed off because I'd accidentally mess up the map and I would have it incorrect, and then I'd be wandering around lost for a while, and eventually look up online to see a completed map on IGN, and it turns out that I just accidentally added a wall where there wasn't one. And I did that a few times, but I only really had myself to blame on that, so that's part of why I enjoyed that system. Another thing about the maps is that apparently there's like a limitation to the amount of icons that you can put on. I never ran into that, and people made this out to be this huge complaint that like, oh, it almost kills the game for me. But what the fuck were they doing? Putting down a goddamn tile every single place that they stepped? That's why it highlights and turns blue. What were they doing? It's weird to me, because I never ran into that as an issue, but people made it sound like it was something that you'll inevitably run into if you're playing Etrian Odyssey 1. Because apparently they fixed it for the second game and the third game, but this one just has that one issue that everyone says is so bad, and I never ran into it. Like, yeah, there's the damage tiles. Apparently, people have complaints that there's no like colored tiles that you can put down to differentiate them. And yeah, that would have been convenient, but like, just use your eyes. Like, oh, you can use the event markers to show you where the damage tiles start and stop. Like, no, just use your eyes. Remember the floor, damn it. Like, that's what I just did by the end of it, because that was satisfying to me, was when I didn't need to rely on the map anymore, because I just knew my way around. And when I didn't know my way around, I had my map to go off of. Beautiful. I don't know what people were doing with that map, but there was zero skill involved. Alright, and the combat. The real meat of the gameplay. It's kind of just a standard turn-based RPG. You choose your moves at the start of the turn for everyone in the party, and then they act. And if they get nuked by an enemy, they just don't act that turn, and it does kind of stink when you try to use an item on someone and you waste it because that party member died. But I like it. Even though it's simple, I think that it's actually really fun. I already talked about Defender, Immunize, Relaxing. Those add a lot of survivability to your team, and then you just have to make sure not to overspend all that. Actually, one thing, it was kind of involved in exploration, but I waited for it to be here just because it's more involved in this. Every time you take a step on the map, the FOEs move. Every time you take a turn in a battle, the FOEs move. So the FOEs can join in fights, and usually people try to avoid that. They say that's the inconvenient part, but when it comes to setting up and using Relaxing, Defender, all that, I find it better if you can try to get a random encounter and then the FOE joins in, because then you're able to be already ready to go, so you can just wail on them. That's what I think was best. Defender and Immunize only last 5 turns, so on just like a normal encounter in the late game, I'd let it run to the 5th turn and then I'd renew it. I'd also renew Relaxing at the same time, but that lasts, I think, 10 turns at max rank. But boss fights where you really don't want it to run out, I usually would renew it on the 4th turn of every 4 turns, just so I can make sure that it doesn't run out. And then I'd go back to slamming the bosses with All Slash, which would do a lot of damage. Smite, I cannot, like, my turn, everything that I did in the fight kind of just became the same after a while, was all slash, which would do around 400 to 500 damage a hit, which that move, if there's multiple enemies, it can hit up to 4 times, but it can't hit the same enemy multiple times, which sucks. I think that it should have been able to, but whatever. It would do around 400 to 500. Smite would do like 600 to 700. Nats, after he wasn't relaxing everyone, his normal attack would do pretty much around 130, which was pretty good damage. Bone Boy would either be defending or healing. There was no real reason to have him attack because that just leaves him open and he did no damage. And then Thunder usually on Grem, which would do around 400 damage. Like, that strategy absolutely melted anything that I came across. Even the final boss, like, yes, he put up a fight. He did fight back pretty good, but in the end I melted him, and it was close at times, but I learned very late into the game that even if a situation seems hopeless, as long as there's any possible way of recovering, the penalty for dying isn't that bad. You go to a previous save, but you can save your map data, so then you don't have to waste as much time just wandering. And because of that, you'll be in a better state. You won't have wasted as much of your resources, basically, just going back and forth trying to complete your map. So I think that it's a really, really fun combat system. There are definitely ways to improve it. The fact that you can only have 3 buffs active at a time kinda sucked, because that meant that, like, for me, there was no using the elemental oils, there was no using attack buffs, that kind of stuff. It was just, alright, defense is up, relaxing up, it's gamer time. But it was still fun. I really liked it. The gameplay was definitely the biggest reason that I came back for more. The story helped it stay together, especially in the later part of the game when I started to really not have as much interest and started to see it more as a grind, but it was still a really, really fun game. The 5th stratum was a lot of fun to fight my way down. Really the worst stratum was the 4th one, the Sandy Barrens. That one sucked. I hated it so much. That one was just bad. I guess I'll do my overall thoughts and conclusions about gameplay in this segment. I think it's great. I think it's incredibly fun and addicting. I had times where I'd just pick up the game for a few minutes and be like, I have some time to kill. I'm letting this download, or that kind of thing. And then I'd accidentally spend hours playing it, because it was just a super fun game. It's a lot of fun to explore, it's a lot of fun to fight. I had a great time with it. So overall, it exceeded my expectations, and I'm giving it a 4 out of 4. So, yeah. Was there anything that I wanted to keep doing in this? No, I'm gonna go to sounds. Listen, I am not a musical expert. All I can tell you is whether I liked or disliked a soundtrack. And I loved the soundtrack of this game. It has an unfair advantage because I do technically have the CD on my computer, and it's the remake songs. Yes, the HD remaster songs kinda sound better, but I actually really like the way that they sounded in this as well. And a huge part of this for the sounds is the sound design, and I think that it is really, really good. The fact that if you're just listening to the game, you don't have to be looking at it 100%, and you can still tell what's going on if you're listening to it. You can tell how many steps you took, that's made very clear. You can tell what's going on in the battle, like who's attacking, that kind of thing. It's really, really good, and I absolutely loved it. Really, just the soundtrack is amazing. The normal the normal fight theme, the traveling themes, the FOEs, the bosses, all of that. The songs are just really, really good. I really liked them. Even though people complain, they say like, oh, the speakers of the DS were terrible, so they sound terrible. Like, no, they don't. They sound pretty good. So I really, I, I'd give it a 5. I'd love to give it the legendary NHS 5, the Zata 5, but I can't because this is my second review in this format, and I really don't want to have power scaling this quickly in. Because when does it stop? When does something get 999 more billion? Like, if I don't hold myself, at least in season one, accountable to staying within my own guidelines, then I don't know. I feel weird about it. I feel like there's no point in the number system if I just start breaking it instantly. I mean, there's no point in the number system. It just gives like a general like, oh, I liked it kind of thing. I think that saying it exceeded my expectations is the best way to describe it because it was really good. I loved the soundtrack. And what would I even call it if it was a 5? So, yeah. There we go. I do find it kind of funny though because sounds and graphics are shorter segments to talk about than the rest of it, so I don't have like a separate conclusions thing for it. I noticed this when I was writing the script, so I thought it was funny to bring up. So yeah, it's a DS game, and it's an old one at that point. Again, I think I mentioned it earlier in the review. At this point, I think it's 2 days until its 16-year anniversary of releasing in the US. So it's not going to look divine by current standards. It still looks really good by today's standards, if you ask me. But especially back then, considering the time, it looks really good. Obviously, it doesn't look like a modern game that runs on the newest version of Unreal, because it looks better than a game that runs on the current version of Unreal. I think we're on Unreal 5 now, and those games just look terrible. I mean, yeah, the character designs, I liked all of them. The monster designs, some of the boss designs were a little weird looking, like Ren and Tlachka. Some of the actual human type ones are humanoid, I guess, because the forest folk would also look kind of strange at times. But they didn't look bad. You could understand what they were going for, because there's only so many ways that you can make a still image kind of come to life in a way. Like the sound design for combat definitely makes it come to life way more than just the static images, but they still they convey some kind of an action that this creature is taking. Like the mole, how it has its hands, it's going because it's trying to fight you, and then the roly poly, how it's curling into a ball because it's an armadillo, that kind of thing. Like, I think that they did really well on that. I brought it up earlier with talking about the story, but I like the design of the dungeons because again, you start as a forest, then you go to a jungle, then a blue jungle, then Arizona, and then you go into real world New York City. And that's the most uninhabitable place of them all. And only one of those was a joke, so I'd like to point out that yeah, it does have that. So it exceeded my expectations. I thought that it was gonna look like shit. There are definitely ways for it to improve, but I'm also not going to say like, oh yeah, this just looked awful. It didn't. It looked really, really good, and I absolutely loved it. So it definitely gets a 4 out of 4. In conclusion, I'm sure it's very obvious that I love this game. Like, I don't think that there's any reason to hide it. I really, really want to play the second game, but I'm actually working on a project for this channel for a soulful selection instead of just a soulless selection, and also another game on the side that I usually do. I have a game that I play full-time and a game that I play part-time. But I really want to play the second one. I'm really looking forward to it. It engaged. It aged really, really well, and it's definitely worth playing. Like, I'm worried about the HD remasters. I think that they're going to do more harm than good for the series because of how they're going to come out on consoles. PC will probably be fine, so If you're gonna get it on PC, there's so many ways to emulate it so that you can play this game from 2007 the way that fucking God intended, because it doesn't... I don't see the reason of buying the HD remaster when you can just download them all for free. Like, that's what I should have done. Especially if you can get the map to work, where you just use the cursor, like how they're doing it for the remakes, or the HD remasters, I guess. Just do that, because the Switch one, when you have to burn a pull-down menu, and then you have to use the cursor and all that, the in-game one to draw the map, that's gonna kill so many people's interest, because it's just gonna make the map design even worse. Or the map process even worse, because it could feel like a grind at times. And that's gonna make it worse. That is not a proper system. It's not gonna work. Just the fact that, like, you don't even have the map accessible at all times is also kind of strange to me. So I can't recommend the remasters, but the original release, absolutely recommend it. These remakes could have been good for the Wii U if anyone would have supported that damn thing. There are so many things that they could have done with the Wii U, that it has that second screen. Look, the map's available on it in the games, on the TV. There's so many things that they could have done with the Wii U that they're trying to push out on systems now that just doesn't make sense. It's upsetting, to be honest, because they had their perfect shot and they blew it. But that is not a reflection on this, because it's really fun, and I can't wait to see where the series goes next. The final scores are 4 for the story, 3 for characters, 4 for the gameplay, 4 for the sounds, and 4 for the graphics. So a total of 19 out of 20. And thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you all next time.